Well, then remember, we do want your emails. We are live and interactive, so if anything strikes you about Chelsea Flower Show, what you see here, or, you know, Dermot's shirt, send us an email. We'll reflect your feelings. Oh, don't mention me ties, though, you know. Now then, how do you capture Cumbria in a 13-foot by 15-foot patch? That was the challenge for Kim Wilde, pop star turned garden designer, exhibiting at Chelsea for the very first time.
I've been completely seduced by nature. It has drawn me in and it's got me by the throat and it's not going to let me go. It's rather lovely, I don't mind shacking up with the plants. So it's a funny thing with gardens though, I thought this the other day. Some days I go out there and I think, it could be so much better, it's not right. Other times I go out there and go, oh, Kim, you're a genius. I was a late comer to the country. It was only when I was 8 years old that we moved to Hertfordshire, and before then I was a South East London girl, lived near Blackheath and Greenwich. You know, we had an apple tree at the bottom of the garden, a few tragic roses along the side of the border there. And once we were installed in Hertfordshire, it was so beautiful. It was in May, and we moved into a garden that was crammed full of azaleas, rhododendrons, silver birches, lots of wildflowers everywhere, and birds singing. And I mean, it was just amazing. It had a huge impact on me as a child. And I've carried that with me. It's never left me. It may have lain dormant for some time during the 80s, but it's come back with a passion now. It's very powerful, and it's manifested itself in this tiny little postage stamp garden at Chelsea Flower Show. For this year's Chelsea Garden, I'm working with Richard Lucas, who I first met about 4 years ago while working here at Holker Garden Festival. The garden that we've chosen to make is called a Cumbrian Fellside Garden. It's totally inspired both of us in so many different ways, and really just taps into the passion that Richard and I share for this beautiful landscape. I'd never been to Cumbria before, and the first time I was introduced to it was via my husband, who was then my boyfriend, and we were in Tommy in the West End together, and we drove up after the show, and he said, we're going up to the lakes. Had no idea it's going to take us so long. We arrived at dawn at Hal's parents' house, and I stumbled out of the car pretty sleepy, and I couldn't believe how beautiful it was, surrounded by these gorgeous mountains, these fell sides. The landscape was incredibly lush and verdant, and there were these sweet little baby lambs wobbling about and making that sweet little noise. And I just looked around and I thought, wow, this is heaven.
Kim and I visited Chelsea last year and we had a good look round. And in the car on the way back from Chelsea, Kim scratched a little design of a garden on her leg and said, what about that?
Did I do that?
Yeah. I believe that everybody is a romantic at heart, and we want to make lovely, soft, luscious plantings that really will just make people go, ah, when they see them. And so we can bring out that romanticism that's in all of us.
The gardens here at Holker Gardens are a perfect example of how the gardens have integrated with the local landscape, more formal, closer to the house, less formal as it sort of reaches out into the fells. And that is what we're trying to capture in our garden at Chelsea, a more sort of studied version of nature within the garden, and then the wilderness, the wild garden surrounding it, sort of saying, hey, but don't forget, we were here first, you know. We inspired you. It wasn't the other way around, by the way, just in case you forgot. Cumbria has had a massive impact on me, and it's a real privilege to be able to try and capture the passion that I have for this landscape, and that Richard has too, in this tiny little garden. I want people who know Cumbria really well to recognise it instantly and go, oh yes, there's my Cumbria.
You know, Kim, for all those fierce pop star years, you're just an old romantic at heart, aren't you, really?
I am. I'm very soppy. I mean, but aren't we all, though, Alan?
I think gardeners have to be,
Yeah.
particularly gardeners who want to make gardens at Chelsea, because they are about romance, they are about dreams.
They are, absolutely. Dreams made a little bit of reality, and I think we probably achieved that here.
I hope you have. I mean, I think you have. Certainly it reeks of Cumberland, not
Good.
least because of the slate. It's that green slate that I've seen so many times when I've driven up there.
It's beautiful Honister slate from the only mine in England. And it's absolutely lovely to work with, and look what a lovely colour it is and how it contrasts beautifully with all the colour in the garden.
It's not a colour you see used very often. I mean, when you see slate, it tends to be purple or dark grey
That's
or
right.
black. The Honister stuff you see rarely, and isn't it interesting? It's got a luminosity to it, really, with those plants alongside it.
It has. It's very special indeed, and I think it's lent the garden a particular character. And it contrasts well with the other darker slate that we've had used on the sculptures, which are absolutely lovely. And all of the artefacts in the garden are made by Cumbrian artists or
So it's very much a local piece of work.
Very much a Cumbrian thing, yeah.
These little gardens out here, you look at them, and it's like comparing an Axminster carpet out there with a tiny little needlepoint tapestry. These are so finely stitched. It must make working them very difficult. You must fall over yourselves, I should think.
I mean, with a few people in the garden, and it's like you have to
Full.
really be careful what you're doing. Everything has to perform, you know, everything has to be in the best possible condition. So it's a meticulous exercise.
People would say, oh, you know, it's only a tiny one. It must be much easier to do a small one like this
Yeah.
than the big one. Presumably it presents its own problems.
It certainly does, because, you know, actually what happens is you don't realise how small it is, so everything does have to be in scale. And some of the elements that we originally had thought of for the garden actually ended up being far too large, and so we had to sort of downscale it even when we were on the grounds. Luckily, we were supported by the artists a lot, who really made that come to life, and by our contractors.
Now, I did hear stories that Kim Wilde's down on a garden with a hairdryer.
Yeah.
And then the sun came out, so that opened your flowers for you rather than getting the hairdryer to do it.
Yeah, the hairdryer thing. I mean, I just had to do it. I got told about this hairdryer thing. I thought, it's got to be one of those things after dinner. Guess what I did at Chelsea? I got the hairdryer out.
Now, the thing I shall always remember about your garden is not you with a hairdryer, but the tangled, old, rusty barbed wire at the back with the Cumbrian sheep's wool still hanging on it. You see fences like that up there absolutely everywhere you look.
Everywhere you go. I mean, beautiful Cumbria. It's so lovely, and everywhere you drive, you see a bit of barbed wire with a bit of sheep wool on it, and you think, right. So we stopped the car. Richard stopped the car. I jumped out, got the wool, brought it all the way down. So that's genuine Cumbrian wool there on the barbed wire.
In SW3. Well done.